We finally were able to get a photograph of a light moving across the room. We shot in total darkness without flash, and here's the picture. Now, as you can see, there's a tail behind it and a light moving across the frame. This was shot without flash. The frame should be completely dark. We have another picture that we shot without flash in total darkness again. This whole picture should be black, but clearly some kind of light has exposed our film, and this was the light we were seeing moving across the room. Now this picture is the most important picture to me. What you see in this picture are reverse arcs of light. Right here you see one arc going this way, and over here you see another arc going the opposite way. And underneath this arc is the woman who claimed that she was being attacked in this house. And as you can see, she's ducking down in this picture, because what we were experiencing at this time were flying, spinning, swirling balls of light moving across the room. They didn't look like arcs, they looked like fully dimensional balls of light. Now if you look closely at this arc, it's floating in space. How do we know that? Well, if it were on the wall, her head would block out part of the arc, but it doesn't. And if you look at the other arc, it's also floating in space. If it were on the wall, it would be bent, because these two walls are perpendicular here. The arc isn't bent, it's floating in space. Now why is this important to us as researchers? Because the skeptic always says somebody in the room is faking it. If they were projecting light, they would have to project it onto a flat surface like a wall. But this is dimensional light floating in space, and it's very difficult to fake something like that. You would need a very sophisticated, high-powered laser system to fake something like this.
A photograph of a little girl in a bush was found when a man came to photograph the hunt in the New Forest. And when he developed it, there's a little girl about 8-10 years old standing in a bush, extending her arms out as though she's asking for help, and she's dressed, we decided, in a 1820 costume. This was brought to me by the vicar. I said, well, we know nothing about her, we'll have to have a service for her. She's obviously lost, or she wouldn't appear. And so we had a Eucharist of this nature, Requiem Mass, or whatever we like to call it, and she's never appeared since, in any photos that have been tried.
This photograph was sent to us by a woman who had a photograph taken on the London Underground, and when it came out, at the back of the photograph, in the window, is a picture of a man in an electric chair. Well, this was quite astounding, because at first we thought it might be a poster, but it was taken in a tunnel, so it couldn't be a poster. And what is more, it is up against the glass, because you can see the sparks, and the actual upright, the wooden upright, appears to overlap the sparks. So it must be right up against the window, so it couldn't be a poster. When I went to see the woman and questioned her, I asked her about her interests, and she said her interest was criminology. So I thought perhaps we had some thoughtography going on here, of transferring thoughts onto photographs. But we eventually found that this man at the back sitting in an electric chair was the man who was electrocuted for the kidnapping of the Limburg child. And that model, as we see it here, is actually in Madame Tussauds, which is a very famous waxworks. And Madame Tussauds is actually built on top of the Bakerloo line, the underground line, where this photograph was taken. The negative is interesting here. It's taken on a 110 camera, and they're very small, as you see the negatives, and it's the third one down. So if it was any question of faking, it would be almost impossible to fake on a negative strip. And anyway, if anybody was really up to it, would they fake on a 110, such a small negative anyway? Here we have a photograph taken by a lady in a private wood in England, and one photograph is of the couple standing together. The other photograph is the couple standing apart, taken almost immediately after one another. And here, quite clearly, you can see a partial apparition of a person encircling the girl. We have the negative for that as well, also on a strip, not been interfered with. This is a photograph of a small child taken by its father in Covent Garden. There was nothing remarkable about just the photograph itself until we looked into the corner. And there in the corner here appears to be a figure floating across without any legs. Here you see a blow-up of that particular part of it. Here again, it is part of the strip of a negative, so there's no question of any faking going on. It has been asked whether the girl was just running, but if she's running, she must be running very, very fast, right in front of the mother and because that's the mother and the child in the background there. The mother says that there was nobody running across there, but even assume that somebody had, she would have been seen, and she must be running very fast, but there's a chain across there at the back, so the figure must have had to sort of come round in a circle and out, and at that speed, running forward with the hands in pockets, is very, very unlikely situation. Besides, what's happened to the legs? Here we have probably the most incredible photograph of the lot, also on a strip of negative, not interfered with. This is a particularly interesting story attached to this one, is that a party of people were on holiday in the Austrian Tyrol, and their last night they decided they would have a meal together, and at the end of the meal they were in the hotel, there was some entertainment going on. One of the party said, "I'll take a photograph of us all." So he put the camera on automatic in a table in front of their table, went back to his seat and waited for the camera to flash. Well, the camera went off, but it didn't flash. So he immediately got up, went back to the camera to see why it hadn't flashed, couldn't find anything wrong, reset it to a 10-second interval, went back to the table, sat down, and the photograph flashed, the camera flashed. They then, when the holiday was over, they had a look through, didn't notice anything particular, put the photographs away. About a month later, one of the other ones at the party came along, had said, "You know, can I have a look at the photographs you took on the holiday?" He said yes, and she was looking through them, and she suddenly said, "Well, who's that?" Well, who's that was this. This is the second photograph taken with the flash, and you can see that's a perfectly normal photograph. This is the first photograph taken without the flash, and in the centre there you'll see quite clearly an extra person seen through the glasses. It's not a double exposure. There's nothing that has not been interfered with at all. It's been looked at very, very carefully. There is no explanation for that photograph whatsoever. It appears to be, and I would say, it's an apparition. Well, we believe that there are lots of photographs like this around, but people just dismiss them as aberrations, don't take very much notice of them. It's only when they can come to us for analysis that we can really look at them carefully.
But a photograph will never be proof. We don't consider what we're doing as proof of anything going on. We consider it just gathering evidence. We're just investigating the phenomena and doing our best to provide evidence that something objective was going on, that it wasn't just mere hallucination, illusion, or fraud, but that rather something is real out there in the environment, and we're trying to document it with whatever physical equipment we can use.
Back at the Bell in Thetford, Howard Wilkinson, physicist and psychic researcher, sets up his equipment to detect a paranormal presence.
Well, the box of tricks is really a glorified burglar alarm, split into two parts, if you like. Like any burglar alarm, it has things attached to it that sense the environment for movement, and in this particular instance, temperature change and so on. And if anything is detected as changing in the environment, then it switches to record mode. Basically, the machine is controlled by a small computer. That allows me to put different programs into depending on the environment, the area that we're working in. The printer here records the data when there is an event. The audio recorder there, that's used for programming the machine and for recording sound, obviously. And I have here some odd devices like magnetic sensors, because there is some evidence that perhaps the geomagnetic field may have some influence on the happenings in a room like this. There's a device for taking the temperature of the environment. So I have 4 sensors that I can spread around the room on long wires. Then moving to the recording side, really, there's a video camera on a stand there. We have a couple of 35mm cameras, only one of which is shown, which is behind me here. And I have also got rigged up an acoustic device which detects movement, or can be used to record sound, or rather detect sound, so that it would switch on and act like a voice switch, if you like.
With the equipment in place, Howard's colleague, parapsychologist Tony Cornell, settles down to pass the night in the haunted room. An image-intensifying lens allows the camera to see in the dark.
In the past, we've been to these haunted houses, been along with a notebook and a camera, thermometer, and half of us have gone to sleep at 4 o'clock because if nothing happens. Most of us go along to these houses and there's been the ghost seen the day before, and the day before that we go, nothing happens. Here's a psychic researcher begging to see a ghost and saying, look, come, my friend, whatever they want, I'll photograph you, I'll help you, whatever, and they don't turn up. The proof that I would like would be for a cooperative ghost to stand in, say, that corner every Wednesday night at exactly 10 o'clock, and we could come in and we could measure it with all our normal 5 senses. If we ever get it on film, I'm quite sure somebody will say, how did you fake it? Well, I think one of the newest experiences I've had of seeing a ghost was when a lady rang me up and said, would you come and look at a ghost in my house? And I said, yes. I have to bring an undergraduate with me. She said, okay, and we made an appointment. The undergraduate, in actual fact, couldn't come at the time. Neither he nor I knew exactly what the ghost was until we got there. I got there, the lady gave me tea, she said that sure enough, the ghost would appear. It did for her, but I didn't see it. She was giving me a description, and she said, oh, Mr. Cornell, you must be able to see it. I couldn't see a thing. Then I heard her suddenly say, oh, hello, and I thought she was probably seeing another ghost, but it wasn't. It was the undergraduate who'd come to the house, knocked on the front door, no answer, saw us talking at the bottom of the hall, walked down the hall, hesitated, and then thought, well, okay, I better go on, because he saw a man with a pipe calling like this. When he got to the door, he pushed through between the lady and myself, and I said, my God, to him, you know, your manners are pretty bad. She got up and said she'd get another cup of tea. It boiled down to the fact that she had given me a description of the ghost when he was something like about 10 miles away, 9 or 10 miles away, so he couldn't have known anything about it. She told me that the ghost had ginger hair, wore a green smoking jacket, grey flannel trousers, and had a pipe in his hand. Now this lad, when I got him out in the garden and said, look, what was all this? He was saying, where was the husband? I said, what do you mean the husband? He said, the husband, the man with the ginger hair and the green smoking jacket. You see? Now that's fascinating, because she sees it, I don't see it, and he comes without any knowledge at all and sees the ghost.
Meanwhile, in Lincolnshire, at Pump Cottage, recording equipment is being installed by the Grimsby Ghostbusters at the site of a particularly baffling case.
It came to a high spot, I suppose, over a period of 2 to 3 months, but it really culminated in the one evening. It was just gone midnight.